Hey guys, we'll get started here in a few minutes. All right, let's get started. How's everybody doing? The wait is finally over. I know you guys have been telling me, begging me at this point, to make an EXOCharts walkthrough for the past couple of months. I kept pushing it back. EXOCharts kept adding new things and basically completely changed their system a couple of times, so I felt that making the video would just be a waste of time. It would have been outdated very quickly. But yeah, now that they've kind of stabilized and their development has hit kind of a point where I feel like there's enough content there and there's enough features that are not changing. They're kind of staying the same, that I can actually make a video and it'll be worth it to people who find it probably a month from now or 2 months from now, whatever. But yeah, so I'm gonna start off just doing our typical stream stuff. We're gonna talk about Bitcoin, talk about some other things, and then we'll get into EXOCharts and talk about how I use it. So for the walkthrough on EXOCharts, I'm not going to do a walkthrough on exactly what their system is and like all the different features they have, and I'm not going to be walking through every little thing on the platform. It would take me forever. There is just so much stuff on this platform that it would be like a 10-part series, and I just don't feel that it's necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to walk through the platform. I'm going to walk through how I use the platform, okay? So I'm going to go over the 3 different techniques that I've been using on EXOCharts, starting off with the delta, and then going into like volume profile, which I already talked about in a bunch of my other videos, and then going into scalping with EXOCharts. When I start the walkthrough, we're going to go over each individually, and I'm going to tell you guys kind of little tips and tricks on how I use it and things to look for, yada yada. But yeah, before we do that, I'm going to take a look at Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about a few of the things we've talked about on stream past couple of weeks, and the levels we were watching, and kind of how it's played out. Let me close my windows a little bit. The traffic's a little loud. But yeah, so if you guys have been keeping up with Discord, keeping up with stream, you guys should have known that this bullish move was coming. We've been talking about the different confluence levels that we have going on down here. We had the accumulation, we had the inverse head and shoulders, we had the Ichimoku cloud, we had the daily order block, we had the weekly cloud. There's just so many different levels that were down here around that 85 to kind of 8,800 range that we're telling you to buy, right? And I've been long since the bottom in Discord. If you guys have been in Discord, you already know this. I've been building a long for basically the entire time that we were in this accumulation. And yeah, we're doing pretty good. I think we're up like 4% already. It's about a 2x to 3x long, so doing very good on my account so far this month. But yeah, so I'm going to pull up some screenshots that we were looking at here in Discord. I also posted them on Twitter. Take a look at some of these different things we were watching and how they played out. So first off, we had that yearly VWAP, right? That 1 year VWAP, looking at 365 days of volume analysis and kind of where the VWAP ends and what are the important levels. And we saw that the VWAP close from last year was around 85.20, right? You can see the dotted lines here, the dotted cross, that is the VWAP close, right? And I started alerting you guys in Discord when we started to find support off of this VWAP close. And we actually ended up falling down and testing it a couple of times. Gave you like 3 or 4 tests, but it never closed below it. Not a single close on the daily below that VWAP. So it showed you that the buyers from last year and the people who wanted to maintain their positions were buying this dip, right? They were protecting their positions. They were buying the accumulation, and then price started to break out above that VWAP level. So we saw a breakout above the VWAP around 9,000, and now we're kind of hovering right above it. So we could end up wicking it still. We got to wait for the daily close to see what's going to happen, but as of right now, we are above that level. So another thing we were watching was this inverse head and shoulders. The inverse head and shoulders was very clean, pretty textbook. On top of the inverse head and shoulders, we had a major gain in momentum on the Momo. The Momo showed you as price was kind of accumulating here. Not only was it inverse head and shoulders, but it was also gaining momentum. So we turned red to green on the OTS. We had the momentum getting higher and higher as we were pushing forward. So this was a very good opportunity to buy, right? Then we saw a breakout of the inverse head and shoulders. And we currently are still playing out. Okay, another thing we were looking at was the 3-hour cloud. The 3-hour cloud, you can see we were finding resistance on the bottom of the cloud. Also was pretty close to the 4-hour cloud as well. But the 3-hour cloud, you were finding resistance on the cloud, but you were also finding support on the Kijun line, the down here on the yellow line. You were finding support on the Kijun. You were finding support on the middle of the range of the accumulation. And then you broke that downtrend and started heading towards the other end of the cloud, confirming the edge to edge on the Ichimoku, right? So then we were confirmed. We broke to the other side of the Ichimoku. We broke the pivot on the OTS. We used the pivot as support. You had that 100% bullish setup on the Ichimoku, green cloud ahead, and then we started to push forward, right? We're finding a little bit of resistance up here above the 100, but below the 200. So you want to keep your eye on that. Another thing we saw on lower time frames, if you guys are scalping or trading more of intraday trading, we saw the breakout of this ascending triangle. So you saw the accumulation down here turn red to green. Look at the difference in the Momo. The Momo gains momentum after putting in this kind of lower level around the -10 range. You put in a higher low, giving you that bull div. You have a bull div on the bottom, and then you are confirmed here with a another higher low on the Momo, and then you turn red to green on the OTS, and then you turn negative to positive on the Momo, confirming that bottom, right? So you had your bottom confirmed, you broke out of your accumulation, and then you got into a ascending triangle. And what do we know about ascending triangles? Ascending triangles are bullish. So we were watching for a continuation to the upside. But also, this one line here, I think I have it in the other screenshot. Grab the other one. That was the top of the accumulation. You can see the top of the accumulation here was kind of holding price down, and you had that ascending triangle on top, or kind of consolidating right below that resistance, right? So what do we know about resistance levels and when price consolidates on them? So typically, if you have a resistance or you have a support, and the price consolidates for a long period of time on that support or resistance, depending on where the momentum is going and where the volume is going, that is typically the signs that's going to show you which way it's going to break out. And more often than not, for something like this, if it's consolidating below that resistance and you see the momentum maintaining and you see that kind of higher low structure, or you see the buyers showing more volume than the sellers, that is typically going to break out to the upside. And that's basically what we were seeing during this. You had higher lows, the buyers were strong, you still had decent momentum, and then you broke to the upside quite easily. And if you guys use my Fibonacci technique, the 0.13 or the 1.13, that's kind of your fake out level. So as long as you break above that fake out level before returning to your top of your accumulation or distribution, whatever it is, that is typically indicative that you're going to continue higher. It's not going to be a fake out. So we broke above that level, and now we're continuing higher. You're finding a little bit of resistance on the 1.382, which is your kind of first strong resistance or support. And that's kind of holding us down here. But yeah, just multiple signals, all pointing to the upside. So hopefully you guys were able to really see that. Really, you were able to see why it broke out, because there were so many signs showing you that it was going to break out to the upside. And if you think it's hindsight, like I said, just look through the Discord. I've been telling you guys every sign that showed up, basically for the past couple of weeks, and also on stream we were talking about it. So there's all these little signs that you guys can find for the next time that it wants to break out. 1 second, I'm gonna update Discord real fast. But yeah, so Bitcoin, higher time frames definitely breaking the upside, definitely showing signs of a bottom being confirmed. You have that accumulation being broken very bullishly. You have slight bear divs coming in. You have like a 15-minute bear div playing out. You had a small 5-minute bear div. You had a small 1-minute bear div that played out here. So you have little bear divs coming in, holding price down. You are showing signs of resistance, but it doesn't look like it wants to full retrace. Maybe if it retraces down to like 89, maybe even 9,000, that's okay. Maybe grab this liquidity here, find some support on this liquidity. It's still bullish. Still looks really good. Finding a little bit of resistance here on the lower time frames, but nothing too big. Now, same thing on Ethereum. Basically, trying to break out of accumulation. The difference on Ethereum is it's not following Bitcoin here. So, if we look at Ethereum, and you want to look at kind of the accumulation, you can see what Ethereum is doing here. You have your low being placed. You have a deviation, which became a fake out. 0.13 was maintained. Deviation, 0.13 maintained. Same thing here, deviation. So you have 3 deviations of the low. And then you have not been able to get above that high. So very different from Bitcoin. You have the accumulation, which is the same. But Bitcoin is already breaking out. The problem that this is showing is typically Bitcoin and Ethereum are pretty similar. They're following the same path. You don't see that here. And what's scary about this is recently Ethereum has been leading Bitcoin. So the big moves that Ethereum has been making have typically led Bitcoin. And if Ethereum doesn't break its accumulation here and continues lower, that is probably going to hold Bitcoin back, and Bitcoin's probably going to pull back towards its accumulation, because we are not seeing that momentum on Ethereum, which is very weird when we're seeing much stronger momentum on Bitcoin. Bitcoin, very obvious, very clean break above your accumulation. Ethereum, just sideways. So maybe it's lagging, or maybe it's leading the way, and it's showing you that Bitcoin is actually faking out. Hey, Spitox, I appreciate that, man. Welcome back. 6 months. Really appreciate the support. But alright, so let me see. Do I want to go over these? I don't think anything crazy is happening. Probably nothing to really go over here. Yeah, nothing really different. Market's still pulling back. VIX is still going up. Oil is still retracing. Nothing really different on the equities market. But all right, I'm gonna get started and go over a few little tips and tricks with EXOCharts. If you guys didn't hear, EXOCharts is now free. Now I still have my same account, so I don't know. They said the only restrictions um are what did they say? Candlestick parameters or something? Let me see what they said. They said limited only on candle periods, so I guess that means like lower time frames or something. But yeah, it's free now, so you guys can go check it out, exocharts.com. This video is not sponsored. They do not pay me to make this walkthrough or anything. So just a small disclaimer. But yeah, so if you guys are just coming in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over not exactly all the little things that EXOCharts offers. I'm not going to walk through the entire platform, but I am going to walk through how I use the platform, okay? So when I use EXOCharts, I have 3 templates that I use. I use a delta template, which is the one you're currently looking at. I use a volume profile template, and I also use a scalping template, okay? So I'm going to go over what each thing is on these templates and how I use them, right? So I'm probably going to split this up into like 2 videos. So if it gets too long, I'll go over maybe the scalping one or the volume profile one in the next video. But right now I'm going to start off with the delta. So what I look for on Bitcoin is I want to look for, or first off, let me explain what delta is. So delta, if you guys don't know what that is, it's the difference in buyers and sellers, right? So if we see a green delta bar, which you see these green bars going up, red bars going down, depending on what delta chart you're using, I'm using delta 10 million. So what these bars are showing me is every time there is 10 million more buyers than sellers based on volume, it's going to create a new bar. So it's going to create a new green bar if there's 10 million more buyers. If there's 10 million more sellers, it's going to create a red bar. This is all just based on volume. So whenever the volume comes in to the buy side or the sell side, that is when the delta is going to be found. So that's what delta is. And now how I use it is basically the same way you would use a candlestick chart. You look for support, resistance, you look for reversals. Typically what I like to look for is the same thing I watch for on my candlestick charts is like accumulation, distribution, looking for ranges. So this is going to be very hard in the video because there are no drawing tools on EXOCharts, so I can't really draw in here and help you visualize. But I can snip it just to give you kind of an example. But yeah, so I like looking for these kind of ranges, right? Same thing I look for in candlestick trading. I like looking for the accumulation and the distribution, kind of where the delta chart is finding support, where the delta chart is finding resistance, and I like to look for those shifts in that delta. So if I'm seeing an accumulation on the delta chart, and I'm seeing an accumulation on my candlestick chart, that's typically a very strong place that I want to start looking for some accumulation plays. So if it's breaking out of the accumulation high, I want to be looking for breakout trades to the upside. If it's bouncing off the accumulation low, like we're seeing here, I would like to look for some buys on that as well. So basically, I use it as confluence for my accumulation distribution techniques. So before I go any further, if you guys are new to trading or you're new to like volume profile, new to accumulation distribution, any of these words that I'm putting out, don't watch this video just yet. I know if you guys are watching live, you can keep watching, but if you guys are new to trading, please take a break from this video, go back, watch my how to trade videos, get some prior knowledge on these techniques that I'm talking about. Because if you don't know my accumulation distribution technique, if you don't know how to trade volume profile, it's not going to make sense, okay? So you need to understand these different techniques before you watch this video on how I use EXOCharts, okay? So with that said, I'm going to get back into it. So yeah, I like looking for confluence with accumulation distribution. I like looking for shifts in the momentum. So as we can see here, you can kind of see prices downtrending. You're putting in these lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, but then you find a very clean bottom here, right? You find a very strong bottom. And then we see that break of the accumulation to the upside. And you can follow that all the way like you would a candlestick chart. You're putting in higher lows, you're breaking into new highs. It's the same exact technique that you would use for a candlestick chart, okay? That's how I use the delta bars. Now, on this same screen, I've got some other things on here. I've got the volume profile on the left, which I use in just a standard volume profile aspect. So like I said, if you guys don't know how to use volume profile, watch that video. But I use this in confluence with my delta bars the same way I would use a volume profile on a candlestick chart. Okay. Now, a few other things that I use down here is the dominant order size, the T size is what it's called on EXOCharts, and the footprint bar stats, right? So I only look for the volume, the delta, and the CVD on the footprint. I don't care about the other metrics that it offers. So the volume, it's volume. There's nothing special about it. It tells you how much volume there is in each delta bar. So because I'm watching 10 million delta, these are not based on volume. There could be 85 million. There could be 10 million. There could be 100 million. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters for this chart is the delta. So the volume is showing you how much volume is in each delta bar, okay? And a little trick that you can do, it's a little more advanced. I call it a delta squeeze, or that's what it's called. Other people call it a delta squeeze as well. So what a delta squeeze is when you have a large amount of volume in a delta bar, and it's struggling to kind of create that delta bar, right? So to create a delta bar under my metric, it needs to be positive 10 million or negative 10 million, right? So if it has a large amount of volume, like we see here, the dark blue, this means that before it was able to create that delta bar, it was battling during that candle. There was a lot of sellers. There was a lot of buyers. They were battling back and forth, back and forth. It was not able to push to one side or the other. It was not able to get positive 10 million. It was not able to get negative 10 million. It was a battle the entire time, okay? So typically, what I look for is very good confluence with my accumulation distribution. So if I'm seeing these delta squeeze bars towards the bottom or top of my accumulation, then that is showing me that those levels are being respected. Those levels, those lows or the highs, are being respected. And as we can see here, this delta bar is a very, very powerful candle. It might look like just a normal candle if you zoom out. But if you zoom in and you really look at what happened during this candle here is a very strong kind of engulfing candle, right? We're engulfing the previous 2, almost 3 delta bars, right? Also, we have a massive amount of volume during that candle. 85 million in volume in that one delta candle. And that delta candle was able to break out to the upside after that battle. So there was a long battle during the bottom of the accumulation, showing you that that level is being supported. The buyers are holding that accumulation low, and then the buyers were able to win. Okay, so it didn't break out immediately, which it doesn't typically, but you can basically, when you see something like that, you can confirm that support, right? So we can confirm that there is a support right there. Like I said, I can't draw on this, but I can take a little snip. So basically, if you wanted to long, like if you were looking to build a long, this is very helpful because this shows you that that support is being bought up. That support is being held, right? So we're holding that level. The buyers want to hold that level. So when you come back to retrace and test that level, that's a good opportunity to take that support. If you like buying support, that's a good trade. You can buy that support and then stop loss kind of below the accumulation low, right? And then look at what happens afterwards. You see that breakout to the upside. So the delta squeezes help you confirm levels. They help you confirm levels and they help you confirm momentum, right? So all the delta squeezes that are on this accumulation low are confirming that accumulation low. Because it's showing you people are battling at that level, right? If people are battling on a support or battling on a resistance, that is telling you that that level is being respected, right? So all of these dark blue right here, I know you can't see the numbers, but you can see the dark blue on the shading. All of these dark blue, these are all delta squeezes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are kind of towards the highs, but you have 2 more down here, 3 more. You have about 10, maybe 11, 12 delta squeeze bars during the low of this accumulation. That's enough confirmation for me. That's plenty of confirmation that that accumulation is holding as a support. Okay? So then another way you can use these delta squeeze bars is to confirm momentum, right? So if you're breaking to the upside and you're showing signs of momentum to the upside and you're still seeing these delta squeeze bars, but they're still breaking the upside, that's showing you that the sellers are trying to push price down, right? They're trying to fight the buyers. They're still losing. So there's a lot of sell volume coming in, but they're not able to push the price down. They're still losing the battle. Okay? So that's another way you can use the delta squeeze bars. And that's basically how I use delta. That's the majority of techniques that I use for the delta. Okay? So I'm going to move on here to another aspect of my chart here is the CVD. So the CVD is the cumulative, I think it's volume delta or something delta. But what it does is it takes all the delta that is happening on the chart and it gives you a cumulative number, right? It adds it up and subtracts it based on what you're seeing, based on what each bar is giving you, okay? So during the beginning of each session, a new CVD is created. So it starts out at 0. So every new session, which is every new day on Bitcoin, it starts a new CVD, okay? So it starts from scratch. And the way that I use it is just kind of the overall metric of the delta. That what are we seeing on delta? Is it very bullish? Is it very bearish? What is the overall delta? Okay. So if you zoom out, this becomes very easy. You don't need to see the numbers. If you zoom out, the shading is enough. And what you can see is when it's very dark red, that is showing you there is a lot of sell delta. There's a lot of seller delta adding up on that CVD, right? And what I've noticed is if you guys like trading like overbought, oversold, kind of extended, if you will, scenarios, what I've noticed is if you look at the shading on the CVD, you see how it turns red, kind of dark red during the bottom, and then it turns off, and it gets lighter because the buyers are coming in. And then once again, it turns red, dark towards the bottom, and then it gets lighter as price is rising. You see that? And then it gets dark red again, and then it turns off. This one's not as accurate because This is during the session close. So this is turned off manually. But what I'm telling you is, if you zoom out, you can see where the volume is coming in, where the delta is coming in. You see how it turns very dark green as you're kind of getting very bullish and you're entering that topping pattern. And then you turn very red towards the bottoms when you're getting very bearish and you're forming kind of those bottom patterns. You see that? So that is another way that I use the CVD. And basically what that's showing you is that the sellers are getting a little extended. So the sellers are getting, they're adding on and adding on and adding on. You're seeing like negative, let me zoom in. You're seeing like negative 89 million towards the bottom. It's showing you that all the way down, the sellers are winning. They're winning the battle. The sellers are adding on top of each other, and they're just pushing price lower, right? But if you guys, like I said, if you like trading those extended scenarios, or you like trading contrarian trading, so you're trading against the crowd, right? You're trading the path of least resistance, then this style of CVD trading you will like. Because what it's showing you is when it's very dark green or very dark red, it's showing you that there are a lot of people on the sell side. There are a lot of people on the buy side. So if you like trading the path of least resistance or contrarian trading, you want to counter trade those people, right? So when you start seeing those buyers start to get wrecked and it starts to pull back on them, these buyers are going to start to give out, and their stop losses are going to start to get taken. And as you can see, you push lower, more liquidity, lower high, push lower, more liquidity, push lower, more liquidity. So you can see that when they get extended, that is typically when price wants to go for those liquidity grabs. And that's a whole nother topic if you guys don't know what I'm talking about. When I talk about liquidity and like grabbing liquidity, I could make another video on that. But that will take me just as much time as going over the EXOCharts. But basically, to put it into layman's terms, like it's looking for stop losses, right? You're hunting for those stop losses. You're hunting for that buy side liquidity. You're hunting for that sell side liquidity. And one way, if you like trading that way, if you like trading the liquidity aspect, keep an eye on the CVD here on EXOCharts, because when you get very green, the buyers are getting extended. When you get very red, the sellers are getting extended, right? And now, obviously, that's not always going to be true. There's nothing in trading that's always true, right? And where you have to be careful using that technique is stuff like this that we're currently seeing. If we're watching a massive accumulation, so you're seeing a long-term accumulation where buyers and sellers were battling for a long period of time, and then that accumulation has been broken to either the upside or the downside. During scenarios like that, you have to be very careful trying to counter trade, right? Because you're trying to counter trade a long-term trend shift, a long-term momentum shift. You do not want to be on the wrong side of a very strong momentum shift, which you have probably seen throughout your trading. I'm sure you guys have been caught on the wrong side of a momentum shift many times before. So if we're looking at like a long period of accumulation here, and then we're seeing a breakout of that accumulation, you can see where the buyers are coming in. The buyers get very strong, and it gets extended, and it pulls back. And then you see the shading. The shading goes from dark green to lighter green because a little bit of those buyers are pulling back, right? The sellers are winning the battle. The buyers are waiting, or they're closing their positions. They're not battling as hard against the sellers as they were before. So that's why you see that delta, that CVD pulling back, right? And then what do you see? You see a break of the high again. And then what do you see on the CVD? The CVD turns dark green again because the buyers are showing that they want to buy this price. They are showing that this is a fair value. Okay? So another thing to look at when you're seeing stuff like this, if you're seeing a very strong shift in momentum and you're seeing this CVD go from dark green to lighter green or dark red to lighter red, and you're asking yourself, is this a fake out or is this a real breakout? So with Bitcoin, you guys know, if you guys trade crypto, it likes to fake out a lot, right? It will have a bunch of fake volume or a bunch of volume come in, and it will fake out the buyers, and it will make you think it's going to break out, and then it'll retrace, right? So one way to use the CVD is to confirm if it's a real breakout or a fake out, right? So this pattern right here, it's going to be very rare for this pattern to occur during a strong fake out, okay? So if you're seeing a breakout of a long-term accumulation and the CVD is showing very good signs of bullish strength, and then you're showing signs of kind of letting off during the pullback, but then you pump back up during the breakout, this is very indicative of a real breakout. If you're seeing the delta chart along with the CVD showing kind of this bull flagging pattern, this is very indicative of a real breakout, okay? Now, I can't take the time and find you a fake one, but if you guys watch my stream, if I ever see a fake one, I'll show you an example of that as well. But yeah, so we're seeing the buyers come in when they're breaking out, and then they're pulling back when the price is kind of taking profit, and they're coming back in during the breakout, right? So now, what we're currently seeing during the current price action is price is kind of selling off a little bit, right? You're not seeing those new highs as quickly as you were seeing before, right? So you had that new high be formed, and then you saw the CVD pump up, and then the price pumped. A very strong new high. And then same thing, pull back, break into a new high, but look at this. You are barely creating a new high, okay? So this is where it's starting to top out. So what you want to look for on the delta chart are those strong delta candles. So every time it tries to pump up here, if you're bearish, you want to see a strong delta bar down. Okay? So pump up, delta bar down. Pump up, delta bar down. Same thing that I was saying earlier about the delta squeeze bars. If you are bearish on a top, let's say we are, where is my snipping tool? Let's say that we are bearish on this top, right? We think that price is going to maintain this top. What you want to look for are those delta squeeze bars confirming that top. So you want to see the squeeze bars battling during that top and then still failing downward. So delta bar down, push up, squeeze, delta bar down, push up, squeeze, delta bar down. You know what I mean? Because each squeeze bar is a battle bar. The buyers and sellers are battling. So if you're bearish, you want the sellers to be winning that battle, right? So when you're forming a top, you want those delta squeeze bars to be showing you that the bears are still winning. Okay? So we have not seen that just yet. You saw a couple of delta squeeze bars on the way up, but you have not seen any squeeze bars until the one that we're currently forming on this high. So if this squeeze bar breaks to the downside or the next candle breaks to the downside, that's going to be starting to confirm that high, right? Now, I know this is a lot, guys. If you guys are watching live, it's going to be a lot to keep up with. But when I make this video on YouTube, you can pause it, you can go back, you can re-listen to my explanation. It's going to be a lot easier to watch it on YouTube. So I know if you guys are confused, you can post some questions, but I'm going to keep trying to go as fast as I can and as clear as I can. But yeah, so that's how I use the delta squeeze and the delta. Now, one last thing that I want to go over here before we switch to the next topic is the T size. So the T size is showing you what the big guys are doing, what the little guys are doing, right? If you look at the T size on the right over here, this shows you the size of each order size, right? So you have the 1 million plus orders, you have the 400K to 1 million, 200 to 400, 100 to 200, 50 to 100, 20 to 50, and then below 20, okay? So how I read this is the bigger 2 to 3 sizes, these like top 3, these are like the big boys. These are like the institutional guys. These are the guys who have big money, right? The guys who are probably like fund traders or using big algos, market makers, etc., right? These are the big boys. And the little 2 to 3 orders, the 2 to 3 sizes, these are the retail guys. These are the guys who are like, kind of like me. Like they've got smaller account sizes. They're not running like hedge funds. They're not running big algos. They're not market making. These are the little guys, right? Now, of course, the big guys can disguise their orders as little guys. So like if they want to make a 10 million size position, they could disguise it into a bunch of little 20K orders. So of course, there could be some institutional guys in these smaller orders, but typically the overall volume, these are the big guys, these are the small guys, right? So what it shows you, there's 2 different ways you can use this. You can go into the settings, and there is the delta mode and there's the regular mode. Now, since this is my delta chart, I use the delta mode. I don't care about the overall volume. I just care about the delta volume, okay? Now, you can use both. They're both very helpful, but for right now, I'm just going to go over the delta version. So what this shows you is if it's blue, that means there's a buyer delta. That means that order size, there's more buyers than there are sellers, okay? If it's red, then that's a bearish delta. There's more sellers than there are buyers, okay? So typically how I use this is when I'm looking at these trend shifts. So like if we're looking at this accumulation and we want to see it break to the upside, right? I want to see confirmation on the T size that not only the retail guys are buying here, but the big guys are buying here as well. Okay? So it's very rare, but sometimes you'll see a divergence. You'll see the big guys going one way and the little guys going another way. Typically, you don't see it very often, but you will see it occasionally. But what I like to look for is I like to see confirmation with not only the CVD, but also the T size. And by zooming out, you can see, look at how much red we have down here. We have a lot of red down here. There's a lot of sellers on all sizes, big size, little size, medium size, all sizes. We have a lot of sellers. But then what do we see? During the break of that accumulation, they're almost all buying. The big guys are buying. The medium guys are buying. The little guys are buying. Okay, so you see confirmation on the breakout from all levels. Retail levels, institutional levels, all of them. They're all buying. That is very good confirmation of a breakout. And same thing would be said to the sell side if you wanted to look for selling confirmation. Or if you're looking for tops forming, you would look for a shift in the buying to selling, right? So you can trade it both ways. This is a good example here because what do we see? During this breakout of this accumulation, we see a nice little buy up, right? And then we see this pullback, kind of like a bull flag, right? Who do we see that's selling during this bull flag? These are almost all the big boys selling. You have the retail guys selling as well, but they're just not really getting a lot of volume. The big boys are the ones that are really taking profit here. You have the 5.5 million delta, 10 million delta, almost another 10 million, almost another 10 million. The big guys are taking profit here. And most likely they're taking profit and then they're re-entering because they do that quite often. And then you see it kind of here where they don't re-enter immediately. You don't see a massive amount of institutional guys re-enter immediately, but then they start to re-enter a little bit. You have that 1.5, 13 million, 2 million, 7.5, 10, 10. So they're not entering very heavy compared to their sell-off, but they're still kind of re-entering and playing the breakout, right? Now, what do you see towards the top here? So this isn't the exact top, but it is where the price started to top out a little bit. What do we see here? If we zoom in and look at this top, you can see that the big guys started to sell pretty early. So the big guys were buying here, 10 million, 10 million, 2.8, 5.9, but then they started selling. And the big traders, the institutional guys, they started selling and taking a lot of profit here. 9 million, 5 million, 3.3, 4.9, 4.5, 11, another 11. So even during this little bottom here where the retailers started buying price up, the big guys were still selling. So they were still selling during that kind of that reversal there. And then they started buying back. They started buying back into the breakout. But then towards the top, they started selling again. So you can see what really drives the price here are these big traders. So basically what I'm telling you guys is whatever direction you're trading in, you typically want to take a look and see if the big boys are following you. Are the institutional guys, are they following your trading? Or are they trading against you? Because you really don't want to trade against them for the most part. For the most part, they are on the right side of the trade. It's very rare that you see the big boys getting caught off sides and the retail traders pushing the price. Typically during like mass mania, like we saw in like 2017, you'll see stuff like that. But the overall kind of sideways trading, you won't see it. Okay, before I move on to my next section, the volume profile section, do you guys have any questions about the CVD trading, the T-size trading, the delta trading? Do you guys have any questions on this method of EXOCharts? You said, what time frame is this chart? This is not a time frame. This is a delta chart. Time has no power here. Time has no power here. This is all delta. The only time a new bar is made is when there is positive 10 million delta or negative 10 million delta. Time has no power here. Do you guys have any questions before I move on? I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna move on here, okay? If you guys are watching the video on YouTube, feel free to put your questions in the comment section, and I will get to them as soon as possible. Angus asked, back when I used to use the CVD, it was represented as a line on the chart. Do they have that on EXOCharts? They do, yeah. So it's it is, let me see, it's one of these. Is it T count? It is on here somewhere. I'm not sure exactly because I don't use it. CVD mode, here it is. So you click on delta bars and then you go to CVD mode. And then it pulls it up here. But alright guys, I'm going to move on to the second part. And since this video is getting pretty long, I'm going to do the third part, the scalping part, next stream. So I'm going to make this 2 videos because we're already coming up on an hour. So I'm going to make this 2 separate videos. So I'm going to do the volume profile one here, which I've actually already done on stream before. I just never highlighted it and put it on YouTube. But we're going to do this section. And then next stream, we're going to finish it up with the scalping section of EXOCharts. All right, so I'm going to get started. As I said, if you guys have any questions, hold them until kind of the end of the, unless it's a quick question, hold them until the end of this section, okay? Okay, so another disclaimer, like I had in the beginning, if you guys have not already watched my volume profile video, you really need to watch that video before you watch this section of EXOCharts, because you're not going to understand anything I'm about to talk about if you do not know how to trade volume profile, okay? So with that said, you guys that are here that know how to trade volume profile, or at least the basics of volume profile, I'm going to get started, okay? So the same thing with this chart as my other charts. I use this in confluence with my accumulation distribution technique, my shift and momentum technique, and my my volume profile, right? So I call this like the value chart. So I'm looking for value, right? And what I'll do is I'll look at the very high time frames. I don't typically do this on lower time frames, but you can do this on lower time frames. But I'll typically look at like the daily, the weekly, the monthly, and I'll try to find value, okay? So as you can see, you're gonna see a very different chart on the higher time frames as you see on the lower ones. And I typically look at the daily first, okay? So what I look for is, I'm just looking at a standard volume profile here. Nothing too fancy about it. It's got the value area highlighted. It's got the outside of the value area grayed out. You see the POC on the yellow bars, and then the dotted lines are the value area high and the value area low, okay? The red bars are a red day. The green bars are a green day. Nothing fancy, okay? So what I do is I'll zoom out, and the same way that you would look at like a candlestick chart and you would try to find like your support and resistance, kind of find where that the candles are clustering. I do the same thing, but with volume profile, okay? So what I look for is the value. So I don't look at the exhaustion. I call this exhaustion. Outside of the value area, I'll refer to this as exhaustion, okay? If you ever hear me say exhaustion, I'm talking about this, the gray areas on the volume profile. This is when price is trading outside of its value area. Okay, so I don't look for exhaustion first. The first thing I look for is value. So when I'm looking for this accumulation, right, I will look at where is price finding value? Where are we seeing multiple value areas in the same spot, right? So we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 days. You could even include like the bottom of this one. But during this accumulation, we're seeing 7 days of value all basically in the same spot, right? So we have 7 days of value in this area, right? So if price were to pull back into this range, there is a lot of support here. So let's for a second pretend that price is going up and then coming back down, right? So price is coming up, going back down, and retesting this kind of value range, right? This is going to be massive support. And where most of the support is going to be is during these POCs. You see all these POCs? Now you can kind of calculate this on your own. Like if you want to find like the exact area of support, you could take all of these POCs, put them into a calculator, and just simply find the average, right? You could find the average POC of all of these candles. And typically, if you go to like a weekly chart or something, it will do that for you. But yeah, let's just eyeball it here and say that the average POC is kind of like this area right here, right? That's going to give us, I can't see it, but it's like 8,800. That's going to be our average value of this accumulation, okay? So if price were to fake out here and fail back downward, if you believed in this support, in this accumulation, that would be where you want to start really looking to pick up some longs, right? You want to start buying the support around that average value zone. Okay? So your average value would be somewhere around like 8750, 8800. So if price were to pull back, that's where your support's going to be. Okay? And we kind of saw that during these two bars here. So use that same methodology. Pretend that we don't see. There's no drawing tool, but pretend like we don't see these 3 days, right? So if we're looking at just this, using that same methodology, you want to look for where are our POCs? Where is the value coming in, right? So we have a lot of value coming in around that 8640 to 8680, kind of around that high 86, low 87 range, right? So if I missed the opportunity, say price was up here and I thought it was breaking out, I was like, I don't really know. I don't want to buy the breakout. I want to kind of wait for a pullback, right? So if you want to wait for a pullback, that's where you want to wait for the pullback. And then what do you see? You see price pull back into that high 8600 range. Price pulled back. The low of the day was 8650. Right on that support. Look at where it found support. Let me zoom in, make this easier for you guys. Might have zoomed in a little too far. But here we go. What do you see here? 8650. Where is that low? That low is on this volume, on this volume, on this volume. You see the value on this value area? You see where the peaks in volume are? And then you see where price is finding support? That is no coincidence. That's not a coincidence. This is what big traders, big institutions, even retail guys, they're all watching for levels just like this. Okay? So this pulled back, retested that value, and then broke out, right? So another way that I use this technique is, what did I say earlier? I said that this is exhaustion, right? These are all exhaustion levels. It's all getting exhausted towards the top of the accumulation, okay? So if I could draw on this like I do on TradingView, this would basically be like your accumulation high, and then like this would be like your accumulation low, and then you're seeing exhaustion around the low, you're seeing exhaustion around the high, right? So that's typically what you'll see. During an accumulation, during a distribution, most of your volume will be pretty balanced. You'll have volume towards the middle of that accumulation or towards the middle of that distribution, right? So one way that you can use the exhaustion to your benefit is, once you start to break out above that exhaustion and you start to find value above that exhaustion, that is kind of confirming that your accumulation is being broken, because you are no longer being exhausted on that accumulation high. So prior to this breakout, 1, 2, 3, I wouldn't count this, but like 4 or 5, you have 5 days being exhausted kind of above 88, 88.60, 88.50. Anytime price got above that level, you got exhausted and pulled back, right? But now we're breaking out above that level and we're finding value. We're finding value above that level. That's confirming the breakout of the accumulation. Okay? Now, the same way that I trade accumulation on candlestick charts, you can trade using this technique where your accumulation high, where all of your exhaustion was, that is now a support, basically, right? So you have a if you have price pulling back into that accumulation high, it will be support. So like I said, if you were late to the party and you wanted to rebuy the accumulation, you could start looking to buy around the accumulation high. And then if it breaks the accumulation high, you really want to start looking to buy around that value. Okay. Now, the same can be said for resistance, right? So if we're pushing higher here, and this continues to push up on Bitcoin, where you want to start looking for resistance is wherever that prior value was. So if we're looking at this previous range here, I don't know why my chart's all messed up. Here we go. Let me fix it a little bit. So if we're looking at this previous range here, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 days of price action, you want to start looking at where was the value during that 7 days. And basically it looks like most of the value is around 96. You have a little bit of value around like 94, but it seems like most of the value is around 96. Okay? So if volume continues upward here and the bulls keep pushing it higher, these value areas around 96 are where you're going to find resistance. Now, if price is very weak, just as I said down here, you're going to retest that exhaustion and you're going to fail. So instead of testing the value, you're going to test the exhaustion. And another good trade is if like we push up here and it pushes into the exhaustion, let's say around like 94, 94.50, and then we start to wick, that's usually a good sign that it's too weak and it's not ready. It's not ready to take that value. Okay? If you start to push into that exhaustion and you start to wick downward, it's telling you that it's not ready. Okay? Now you can do this on higher time frames as well. Let me refresh. I think I might have broke it. So like on a weekly, you could do the same exact thing. So what did we see on the weekly here? I'm going to go a little bit faster now that you guys know the technique. So what did we see here? We saw value, value, value. And then we had a little bit of exhaustion up here. But then we broke above the exhaustion. We formed value. We found value above the prior exhaustion. Okay? And then what did we do? We continued upward. We found more value. We found more value. And then we failed. And it got exhausted. And where did it get exhausted here? This is a good point. We tried to push up. And then look at where it failed. It failed on that previous value. So you were finding resistance based on all this previous value. So you pushed up, you got exhausted on that previous value. This is a pretty good sell signal here. Okay? But same thing. You had your prior value down here, and then you broke out to the upside, and then look at where you found support. Where did you find support? You found support on your previous value. You see that? And now we're bouncing higher. This is very bullish. For the long term, this is very bullish. Now, we're not finding value just yet. We're still getting... we don't have enough volume to kind of push the value area up here. We still need to break above the previous week's value area high to really start to find some volume. Which is another good point. Look at where you failed. You failed right on the previous week's value area high. So it tried to push higher. It didn't have the momentum to get above the previous week's value area high, right? So to confirm this bottom here, what I would want to see is for either this candle or the next weekly candle to start to find value above the previous week's value area high, which is this blue line right here. Okay? Now, a bunch of other little things that I do are just typical volume profile things, like looking for breaks of the value area highs, looking for breaks of the value area lows, watching for supports on the POCs, watching for gap fills. All that stuff I'm not going to talk about because I already talked about that in my volume profile video. So it's just going to be the same exact thing. But yeah, all the stuff that I talk about in that video, I do on this chart as well. This is my volume profile chart for EXOCharts. But yeah, that's it, man. That's all the techniques that I use for the delta and for the volume profile. I'm going to go over some more techniques in our next video. I'm going to be talking about that on Saturday or Sunday. If you guys want to watch the second part, just make sure to stop by on Saturday or Sunday. Not sure why this isn't loading. Do you guys have any questions about the volume profile technique or the delta technique before I close up the stream here? And like I said, as always, guys, if you guys are watching the VOD, don't be afraid to ask questions in the comments. And if you ever want to watch the live stream, if you guys are coming from YouTube, it is twitch.tv/DejaBrewTrades. You guys can watch the live streams and ask questions live during these videos. But all right, guys, I'm not seeing any questions. That's a good thing, hopefully. Hopefully, I was very clear in the way that I was explaining this. I'm going to be going over my scalping technique, like I said, probably on Saturday or Sunday. And that will be the final part of our EXOCharts kind of walkthrough until I feel like I have enough further techniques to make another video. But all right, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. As always, if you guys liked, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, and I will be streaming again on Saturday. Appreciate you guys being here. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Have a good one.